Right. All right. So today we're having a session on online fraud awareness. My name is Justin LaJeunesse. I'm the Vice President of Finance and Centralized Services here at Lakeview Credit Union in the Dawson Creek branch. And what our goal is today is to kind of walk you through some of the main frauds, give you an idea of what fraud is, and then how we can go through some quick tips on how to protect yourselves when you're doing anything online, whether it's online banking, maybe you're just browsing the internet, maybe you're on Facebook or LinkedIn or something like that. Just want to make sure that we're giving you all the tools to keep yourself safe. So before we begin, the first part is just understanding what is fraud. So online fraud, it's also known as internet fraud, is basically any type of fraud that uses the internet to defraud victims or take advantage of them. So when we look at online fraud, it can happen in many different forms. The most common forms that we see are phishing scams, identity theft, credit card fraud, and there's tons of other ones, but these are the kind of the main ones that we see, especially when it comes to online banking and your safety there. So when we go through this presentation, we're going to explore four of these types and the best way to protect yourselves and just tips and tricks on things to look for when you're using the internet or online devices to do this. So just as you see here, we're going to explore these types of frauds. Just so you're all aware, online fraud is detectable. There are tools, there's things that you can do to protect yourself and to help detect these things. And then we'll go through some of the tools that we have available here at Lakeview Credit Union to help you with your online banking protection. Like I mentioned, the types of fraud that we're going to explore today are identity theft. I'm sure most of you have heard stories of this, seen it in the news. Hopefully you haven't been subject to this, but this is basically where fraudsters will collect personal information and use that for their own financial gain. The next thing that we will be looking at is phishing or smishing attempts. So this is the use of email or text messages used to trick people into sharing their personal information, and then from there they can use it for financial gain. The next one is credit card fraud. So basically this is where fraudsters will steal your credit card information or steal your credit card, and then they'll use it to make online purchases, or they'll go to ATMs and they will do cash advances and basically max out those credit cards. And then the last one that we've seen is social media scams, or they call it social engineering scams. And it's basically where they use fake profiles, or they'll reach out to you and try to trick you into sharing your personal information. And basically they use that to do account takeovers, or they'll use that to basically pretend to be you to try to get the financial information from other people. Um, so the first one that we're going to talk about today is phishing and smishing attempts. So these are probably something that you're all aware of. Hopefully, if you have email, these things will end up in your junk mail, so you don't have to worry about them. But if they do manage to make it to your inbox, basically, phishing is just a type of cybersecurity attack where a malicious actor or a fraudster will send you a message and they'll pretend to be a trusted person or an entity. So maybe what they'll do is they'll send you an email that looks like Microsoft or Apple or Amazon, and it looks legitimate. But if you look at the actual email itself, there's some stuff that you can determine that are illegitimate. The smishing side of this is basically the exact same thing as a phishing attempt, but what they do is they do it over SMS communication or text messages. So the exact same idea, you'll get a text message saying, hey, this is Amazon, please verify your account. There'll be a link and you have to click on it to validate yourself. So we'll go through some examples, but that's what they are. The main goals of these two types of attempts is basically to collect personal information from you or to install malware on your devices. So if malware is installed, so basically malware is things like keystroke loggers. They can monitor your browsing history. They can even go into anything that you have saved on your computer or your internet browser, and they can collect all that information without you even being aware. And then from there, then they'll start doing fraudulent activity, whether it's, email money transfers, or maybe they'll have your credit card information, and they will start going through that process of basically doing whatever their goal is to get financial gain. And like mentioned before, a lot of these attempts that you'll see come through are from reputable organizations. So organizations that are really big. So Microsoft, Amazon, Apple, maybe if you have a delivery service like FedEx, things will come through in those manners, and they will try to basically get you to interact with either the email or the text message. So, so basically, we're going to go through kind of some examples of what a smishing attempt is and what you can do to protect yourself from it. So, so when you get a text message on your phone, usually it will come up with a name if you have them saved as a contact, or it'll come up with a number at the very top of your screen, depending on the device that you're using. And it will have the number. It'll let you know what the number is. So before even interacting with that text message and doing any type of response back and forth, the first thing that you can do to protect yourself is to look at that number and see if you recognize it. Do you recognize this text message number or a cell phone number? And were you expecting to hear from that number? Like, were you expecting to hear from this individual or this number? And then if you're still unsure, there's a couple other steps that you can take once you're actually in the text message and you've opened it up. So read the text message and look at it as does it make sense? So the couple of the examples that you see below is, a good example. They'll say, "Dear Walmart shopper." I mean, the first thing that you see in here, or at least that I see when I'm looking at this, is Walmart right off the bat is spelled incorrectly. So that's just kind of a red flag right off the bat. And then the next thing it'll say, you've won $1,000 Target gift card. Doesn't really make sense that someone from Walmart would be reaching out offering $1,000 Target gift card. So that's just one of those things where you're reading the text message and does it make sense? Does it sound like something that you would normally interact with or something that you were expecting? The second part that you can do when you're reading these text messages is read it, and does it sound like how a person would normally communicate with you? So if you're an avid texter and you're doing a lot of texting, do you get a lot of text messages, and how does that interaction go? Are they people always offering you things? Probably not. They're probably asking how your day is going. You're probably confirming plans, things like that. So especially when you get an email or a text message out of the blue, kind of, look at it through that lens. Some of the other things that they'll do is they'll claim that you've won, some type of money, or you've won some kind of draw or a raffle, or they'll ask you to reset your password. Those are kind of the common ones that we've seen, but some of them are getting tricky. They'll say, you have a package delivery, and now in the online world where people do a lot of, Amazon shopping or any type of shopping, they might be, reaching out, asking for you to validate your, mailing address, or validate that you have a package that needs to be released. So again, if you're not doing those kind of things, does it make sense that you would have been getting a text message requiring you to do these things? And then the last thing that is kind of I don't want to say a dead giveaway, but another red flag in a text message is when you get a text message from an unknown number, and in the body of the message, does it have a link attached to it? If it does, it's almost always some type of smishing attempt where they're hoping that you will click the link and that it'll direct them to a website that looks probably pretty legitimate and ask you to validate yourself. So those are some of the tips to look for when you're doing this. If you do receive a text message like this that you don't know, and even if you want to interact with it, just delete it or just ignore it. If it's a legitimate person that's wanting to get a hold of you, they'll probably try to text you again with a different thing, or they'll call you and validate what they're asking for. But the best kind of thing is, go through these steps here. And then if If it sounds too good to be true or something sounds suspicious, just delete it, just ignore it. Most phones nowadays will allow you to block numbers that you don't want to have, communication from. So those are other tips and tricks that you can use to protect yourself from smishing attempts. So the next one is phishing attempts. So very similar to the smishing thing, so text messages, but they come through in the form of an email. So very similar to what we did with the smishing ones is look at the email and do you recognize the email address that it's coming from? Do you recognize the sender's name? So if you are getting an email from, say, Lakeview Credit Union, but the email address says, johndoe@gmail.com, that wouldn't make much sense because most organizations would have like an @lvcu.ca or @lakeviewcreditunion.com as part of the email address because they own the domain that email address is part of, and it's kind of linked in with the website. So just kind of look at that. We'll go through some examples after this slide here, and I'll show you what it is. Another thing that you can do before you even interact with an email is if you hover over the sender's name on a computer or tap on the name on your mobile device, you can actually see the email address. And usually you can glean a lot of information from that. You'll see maybe it might say, from Microsoft, but if you look at the email address, it'll look a whole bunch of messy. And I'll show you some examples of that. So those are some tips just to look at the email before you even get into reading the content. So once you got done that stuff, the next things that you can do is you can actually look at the email. So very similar to text messages. Read it. Does it make sense? Were you expecting to get an email from this individual or from this source? If not, it's probably fraudulent or some type of spam, and I would ignore it. But some of the things that you can look at on an email, especially when you're looking at them on a computer device, is look at the format of the email. Most people will usually introduce themselves, they'll say what they want, and then they'll, have a signature on the bottom of it. If the fonts aren't consistent, if the graphics look, squished or overstretched, or maybe they're really grainy, those would probably be good indicators that that the email is a phishing attempt. Again, look at how the message reads. Is that how a person would normally communicate with you over email? If not, then I would probably suspect it as being spam or a phishing attempt. Look at the email. Most of these emails, just like the smishing attempt for text messages, they'll ask you to, reset your password or validate your information when you didn't even make a request or you haven't logged in to that particular account or things like that. So those are some things to look for as well. And then just like the text message and the smishing attempts, does it have a link included or some kind of icon that you need to interact with in order to go to the next step? If it does, most likely that is a smishing attempt. So what I'd like to do right here is just kind of get out of this screen here, and I just have some examples here of some emails that I've received that are clearly phishing attempts. And I just wanted to show you what I was talking about. So the way my email is set up is that the email will show here. So the first thing that I'm looking at is it's coming from notification, which is a little bit unusual. And then when I look at the email, it says notifywallet.texas.mail.com. I don't know @mail.com. I've never heard of it. If you look at how they spelled notify, it's not even spelled correctly. And it's also been sent by on behalf of another thing. So right here, I already got my suspicion up here. Looking at this, the title of it, the subject line, you need to revalidate. I've never asked for revalidation, so this is kind of another thing. We have some monitoring tools that will say, you don't normally get messages from it. So that's another thing. If you have that available on your personal email, I would set that up. You might have to go digging into some of the settings, but probably a Google search will tell you how to do that, or maybe even the help option in your email. And then just getting down into the body of the email. So again, they have a font here, a different font here, and then a different font here. They're repeating themselves. They're telling me to validate with a 12-word passphrase that I would never have set up. And then they're asking for me to validate the link. So without even clicking the link, if you just hover over it on the computer, you will get what the link is on the screen. I'm not sure if you can see it. It might be a little bit small, but this is also another example of a tool that you can use is just kind of hover over it. Don't click on it. Just move your mouse over it. And you'll see what the link is. Does it make sense of where it's coming from? In this case, it's just a bunch of random letters. I would not click on a link like this. And then the last thing is that this is coming from mail.com. If you look at the email, it actually says that it's coming from American Express, and it has a link for you to click on for unsubscribe, but it doesn't work. But it works down here, and this is another way of them trying to trick you to interact with their stuff. So probably if you were to hit unsubscribe here, you would have to validate your email address. It might ask you for a password, things like that. And that's just another way that they try to trick you. So just looking at this whole example as a whole, those are some tips and tricks when you're just interacting with an email on how to protect yourself. Just a few other ones. Looking at this statement of account for Lakeview Credit Union, this is not how we do it. I know the account number or the email for Lakeview Credit Union, so I wouldn't interact with this. They like to target, senior executives, so CEOs, VPs like myself, maybe even marketing managers, people in higher up positions, because usually their access levels are greater than say a frontline staff. So, and then they have statements in weird formats. So just some examples there, just of how you can interact. So I'll get back into my presentation here and move on. So the next one I wanted to talk to you about is identity theft. I think this is probably one of the scarier kind of things, is because this crime is really used to attack your identity and use your personal and sensitive information to act on behalf of you. And usually what we've seen is, these people will have your information, so your full name, your address, your social insurance number, other information, and they will start opening up, accounts in your name. They'll start, depositing fictitious checks in that name. Maybe they'll open up lending facilities in your name, and they're all legitimate because they have your real information, but you are the one on the hook, not them. And so what you can do for this is obviously keep your personal information secure. So examples of that is, don't carry around your passport. Avoid carrying around your social insurance number. If you have multiple credit cards, maybe some of them are just for backup. Only keep the one that you use in your wallet or your purse. Try not to carry excess things. The other things that you can do is create passwords that are complex and they're strong. So I know this is a pain, especially in today's world. We have accounts for everything. You have one for Netflix, you have one for online banking, one for Amazon. You have everything, right? But if you can go through this process of setting up a complex thing. So I've given some examples here. And what I've done is there's a nice tool online called passwordmonster.com. And what you can do is you can put in your password, and what it'll do is it will tell you how long it would take the most sophisticated kind of password crackers right now, how long it would take for that to happen. So you can see these examples that I've put up here. It take 4 million years for them to get into it. So that is a good thing. Some people think that, if you just put in like spring 2023 ! That's a strong password. I did test that yesterday. It would take 30 seconds to crack that. So even if you try to, spell a word using characters, like special characters, it's still not things. So this is just a nice little tool for you. The other thing that you can do is start using passphrases. A lot of places will allow you to use passphrases. So you can create something that makes sense to you. So you can, you can do like pink fluffy dog, 1933 or something like that. And if you put the spaces in there and you have it, it's a lot harder for, password crackers to actually go through that, because they're not expecting to have spaces in looking for words. They're looking for a combination of, sequential numbers and characters. So That's another thing. One thing that you can do to also protect yourself from identity theft is try to avoid using the same password on multiple accounts. And this one's really hard because, again, we have so many accounts now. Everybody wants us to sign up. If you want to interact in certain things, you need to have, multiple accounts, and then that means multiple passwords. So it's hard to keep track of those things. But it is really recommended that you try to use a different password for each account if possible. And then if you have issues with it, there are some password managers out there. Some of them are built into antivirus protection if you have, and some of them are really free, or not free, but really cheap to have. So if you have, multiple accounts that you need to keep track of, that's another thing that you can look at. The other thing that you can do is all your devices that you have connected to the internet, make sure that they're locked when they're not in use. So if you have a laptop, don't just close the lid. Make sure that you actually go through the process of locking it, or maybe even restarting it when you're done. If you have, iPads or phones, make sure that you have a password on there, or you have some kind of PIN set up for it. Or better yet, use biometric login. So they'll have to scan your face, or they have to have your fingerprint in order to get in. So that's going to be another layer of protection. If these services offer two-factor authentication, which is becoming increasingly popular now, go through the process of setting it up. It's just another layer to validate you to get into your account. It's a one extra step for you, but it's really important. It'll also, most of the time, will notify you that you need to approve a login when someone else is trying to log into your account. So if your stuff has been stolen, you will get a notification saying, hey, you need to, authenticate yourself. And if you're not trying to log in, you know that something's going on, and you can go in and you can lock down your account, change your password, and things like that. And then the final thing is that if you do use, paper statements or credit card statements and things like that, you haven't signed up for the online e-statements, make sure that when you get those things, read them, make sure that they reconcile, they balance, whatever you need to do with them. And then when you're going to get rid of them, don't just throw them in the garbage. Shred them. You can take them to places where you can shred them, or you can have a little tearing up party and just tear it up into small pieces, or use scissors and cut them up into small pieces, and that will really help protect you. And then one more is credit card fraud. So this one is pretty self-explanatory. So basically what it is someone will steal your credit card information or your credit card. So they don't need to physically have your credit card. They just need to have your information, and then they'll use it without permission. So if they have that information, what they'll do is they'll start making purchases online or in store. Most of them will go to the ATMs, and they will do cash advances or cash withdrawals, and they will max out their credit card. They get it, all the money, you're left with the payment and the insurance process and stuff like that. So just a couple ways that this is stolen, and things that you can do to protect yourself. So sometimes fraudsters will do the old school way. They will actually look for this information in your trash, or maybe they'll hack into your mailbox or go into your mailbox and take it. The other ones that they'll do is this kind of goes back to the phishing and smishing attempts. They will send you fraudulent emails or text messages and ask you to interact with the link. If they do that, then they'll install malware and things to track you. Some of the other events, you've probably heard stories about this of, Equifax and TransUnion, things like that, where hackers will actually get into, a company's computers or their network, and they'll steal credit card information like that. And then the other thing will be people will actually ask you to put in your credit card information, and you haven't accessed that account, or you haven't gone to that website. And so that's just another way that they'll do that. And then the last one is that I want to cover is social media scams, or social engineering scams. So basically what they do is they'll use platforms like Facebook or Instagram or Twitter, LinkedIn if you're a professional. And what they'll do is they'll try to create a fake account, and then they'll try to get you to interact with them in order to share your personal information, or even gain access to your social media accounts. And so some of the things that you can do to help yourself is just be aware of what you're doing on these platforms and who you're interacting with, and who you're accepting friends requests from, or maybe private messages from, and go through there. So some of the things that you can do is, if you are going to interact in these platforms, is only follow and accept friend requests from people you know. So I know this one sounds pretty obvious, but sometimes you might get a friend request from someone that you haven't seen in 30 years. It doesn't mean that you have to do it, but just be cautious with that. Make sure that you're really doing your due diligence before you accept and follow those people. Update your account settings. So a lot of these platforms will allow you to update your account settings to meet a level of security that you're comfortable with. So a lot of these things will allow you to have private options, or maybe like on Facebook, if you want to be in control of your friends list, you can actually go into it and you can turn on a setting that will allow you only to send friend requests. You can't receive any. The other thing that you can do is on some of these platforms, you can actually set your account to private or restricted, and that will allow you to filter any incoming friend requests or messages. So your account is still open to everybody that you want to follow and have access to your account, but it'll stop you from getting any of those spam alerts or spam messages or fake accounts trying to get access to you. So you just have to go through the settings of each of those platforms. Look at the posts that are coming into your messages, so private messages, or even onto your feed, I guess, and asking you to install something or claim a prize. Some examples right here. I mean, these are kind of dated, but still a good example is, here's something that said they viewed your file and they want you to see if you want to know who's looking at your profile and whatnot. Click here to link and install this. Most of the time, people that are looking at your account are your friends anyways, and people that you've vetted. So having to go through something that requires you to install something or interact with a link is a fear that you need to be mindful of. And then also some of these posts, especially Facebook and Instagram, and Twitter, you can also see how many times people have interacted with it. If the number seems absurd, like this one's 89 million times that this has been installed, probably, Facebook is quite popular, but that just seems a little bit ridiculous. So that's just a way to protect yourself and kind of, monitor that message. The other ones is you can probably see these before, is that, congratulations, you've won something. And then you have to click a link and there's a time limit on it. If you aren't signing up to win a gift card or you're part of a raffle or something like that, I would ignore these ones and just, either delete them or block them, or whatever the app that you're using and working on will allow for you to do. The other thing that social media scams or social engineering scams will do is they will ask for your passwords, or they'll ask for you to validate your account number or your credit card information. Don't do that. I know it sounds obvious, but sometimes these people are very, very clever in trying to get that information out of you. Know that no legitimate business would ever ask for your information over social media. It's just not a thing. No matter how convincing they sound, they won't do it. We actually just had a couple examples that were shared with me about this, that people reached out to them over an email. It sounded legitimate, and they went through the whole process. They responded. They allowed this bad actor to install something on their computer. It just blew up so quickly. Thankfully, they weren't harmed in any of this, but the bad actors, these fraudsters, are getting more and more clever. So your due diligence on this is really important. And then the last thing that you can kind of do to protect yourself from these social media and social engineering scams is that if you don't need an account, so say you had a Facebook account years ago and you no longer interact with it, what I would recommend doing is go log back into Facebook and close your account, because then you don't have to worry about your information being out there and available. So not saying that's kind of like an extreme, but again, if you've signed up for Twitter years ago, you're not using it, go through the process of logging back in and closing that account, and that'll definitely help protect you. So what we're going to do here is just kind of go through kind of like a summarization. I'm going to have a few examples here as well to do this. So how do you protect yourself online? So the first thing that you can do when you're online, especially when you're looking at something and you're researching something, is make sure that you are looking at the website and the address, and only interact with ones that have this HTTPS or the padlock image. I'll show you an example of that after here. But with this S, oops, sorry, this S that you see here, it stands for secure. So there's a protocol that you have to go through when you're creating a website, that you can either make it unsecure or you can make it secure. And this S stands for secure. So that means that there's some type of authorization in the background, some kind of monitoring in the background that is protecting all of the information that will be stored on that site past that window. So so I'll give you an example of that. The other thing that you can look at, depending on what browser you're on and what device you're on, is you can see a little padlock right next to the email or the website address, sorry. And it'll be right on the left-hand side of it, and that'll kind of give you another indication that you are supposedly on a secure site. And so that's one thing. So just at the bottom here, this is kind of a normal URL is what they're called. So a link. So the protocol is just basically, is it secure or not? So if it has an S, yes, it is. The subdomain, so usually it's www, and then they'll have Google, or maybe it'll be lakeviewcreditunion.com, or maybe it'll be Amazon, and that will help you determine what's going on. And then the top level domain is just basically where it's kind of registered. So .com, .org, .net, those are usually really big ones in the States. Canadians usually have .ca. So that'll help you navigate what's going on. A lot of spam emails or links and stuff like that will have a link that'll be like, .jp or UK, something like that, that is outside of where you would normally do business and do searches. So that's just another way of you to understand it. And then the last part that's really nice is when you're looking at a link, the part at the very end will kind of give you an idea of what's going on. And I'll give you some examples of what that looks like. But this will also help you decide, like, okay, the rest of this looks legitimate, but this end part looks suspicious. Don't interact with it. The other thing that you can do, and this one takes a little bit of effort on your parts, but any device that you have connected to the internet, make sure that it stays up to date. So for your computers, there's usually a settings option, depending on if you're Windows or your Apple or Mac. You can go into your settings. There should be an update option to make sure that your computer's staying up to date. Phones will do the same thing. Apps will do the same thing. Go to your app store, make sure that your apps stay up to date, make sure that your phone operating system stays up to date. And the reason why these updates are so important is that each one of these updates usually includes some type of security or privacy patch, and they're for your protection. So I know it's a little bit of work, but having that, if you have an iPhone, if you see your little settings icon and you have that red dot on it, that means that something needs to be brought to your attention. Most likely it's a software issue and you need to update it. I know it has a little bit of work, but it's worth it because you are getting the latest and greatest security and privacy measures within those things. Same with your computer and Windows, Mac, you get the best security and privacy through that. The other thing, I think this is probably straightforward, but don't give your credit card information over email, especially if it's not someone that you recognize. Nobody would ask for your credit card information over email. If they do and you think it's legitimate, pick up the phone and call them and verify, because usually that'll also help you. But unless you are initiating the credit card information transaction, don't give it away from someone calling and asking, or emailing and asking, or texting you and asking for it. If you can, avoid using public computers, so at libraries or internet cafes, to do any type of online banking, online shopping. If you have to use a computer, depending on the circumstance, when you're done, you can go through and you can clear the history and clear the cache. And I'll go through an example on show you how to do that. We covered this before in the smishing and phishing. Don't interact or respond or click on any links in suspicious emails or text messages. Again, don't create accounts for platforms that you won't use or monitor on a regular basis. So if someone's asking you to create an account that you don't have any business looking at in the future, don't go through the process. Again, if you have an account that's active that you're not using, you might want to go through the process of deleting that. Again, don't give any login credentials, email addresses, account numbers, credit card information, passwords, anything over the phone, email, or text messages. Most legitimate businesses and people will never ask for that information in that manner. If you can, and we'll go through this as well, set up online security alerts. There's a lot of online accounts that will have security alerts that are available to you. Lakeview is one of them, and I'll show you what that looks like. And they can actually update you on certain activities that are going on in your account. And then the last thing that you can do is use biometrics or two-factor authentications whenever possible. So this is just adding another layer of security that requires you to identify yourself. So biometric logins, it requires your face, your fingerprints to gain access. Two-factor authentication basically is a process that you would go through and you would update and you would authenticate yourself right off the get-go. And then from there, it'll prompt it every time or, anytime a risky login is done. And then you have to go through the process of validating yourself. So one of the things that you can do to protect yourself, this is something that Lakeview has currently available online, is if you bank with Lakeview and you have an online account, you can go into the web version from our website. You can log in and there is a option where you can go and you can manage your alerts. There's 4 of them here right now. And these are something that I would recommend all of you doing. You can interact, you can set up if you want to get an email alert or text message. But basically what these do is one will alert you if you've logged onto your online banking. So if you haven't logged onto your online banking and you get that message, something's probably going on and you need to, contact the branch and we can get you sorted out. You'll also get one if your PAC has changed, so your password has changed. You can get one for anytime a new bill payment payee is added. So usually what we've seen in the past is that if an account takeover has happened, bad actors or fraudsters will go on to your online banking, and what they'll do is they'll add 4 or 5 different credit cards to it, and they'll use your account to pay those bills. And basically that's how they're getting access to the money. So they put the money on the credit card, they go and they do their shopping or go to the ATMs and take it out. So having this new payee added is another feature as well. And then the last one is, we also see this in conjunction with the bill payment ones, is they'll also start sending e-transfers. So, but in order for them to do that, they have to add a contact. So these alerts right here will give you access to activity that's going on in your account. I would really recommend that you would go through this. So this is what it looks like on the web. If you wanted to do it on the mobile version, we're going to be launching this really, really soon. So this is an example of what it'll look like. So if you have our online app, you would log in, you would scroll over, you would drag your finger to the left, and you will see this new tile called Alerts. Or the other thing that you can do is hit this hamburger button, and you'll see an alerts thing. You can tap on it. And then what you will get is you will get an option to manage your alerts, and you can set them all up. You can see what type of alerts you've had in the past. You can do settings. So maybe you get a new phone number, you want to change it. Maybe you don't want them coming to your phone, you want them coming to your email. You can go through and you can manage it all in this. So this will be coming in the coming weeks. Again, I would highly recommend that you add these for your protection. And then the other thing that you can do, and this is just going back to the biometric login, is that if you're using our online app, What you can do is you can scroll over to the left again. So drag your finger over to the left and you'll see a tile called settings, or you can hit the hamburger button and go down to settings. You will see an option called biometric setup. And basically what it'll do is it'll use your phone's biometric setup, and it'll allow you to use that to gain access to log in. So you don't have to put in a password anymore. You're just using your face or your fingerprint in order to provide some examples for you. So the last thing that I promised that I was going to do here before we go into question time is just give you some ideas on what Google does, or when you're doing an online search. So if I was to go to, say, Lakeview Credit Union, and I search for that, before I even interact or click on any of the links, you will see that Google will have this tool right here, and it'll give you the actual URL. I'm going to just zoom in my screen here a little bit for everybody. And right here, going back to that example, this is the security. So this is the protocol. So you can see that it's HTTPS, and then you got this, and then this is our this is basically our domain. So it's Lakeview Credit Union. Everything here looks correct. It's spelled correctly. It doesn't have any, capital letters or, extra numbers or anything. And then it's .com, and this looks legitimate. So that's what I would look at first before ever clicking on a link and going into it. So that's one way that you can help protect yourself. Same with, say you want to go onto Facebook. Again, you come onto this. Facebook is going to have this is the protocol. So you can see the S, it has the security. And then you see the Facebook.com. So Facebook is spelled correctly. There's no additional things. You don't see that slash with that index that has additional kind of things on it. So sometimes what you'll see is, I'll go back to Lakeview here, is depending on how the website is set up, is you will see some indexing and stuff like that. So what you can see is you got the my card info. Sometimes what it'll do is I'll go into our page here. We can see up here. So if I type accounts and I go to checking accounts, at the top here, this is where the index comes in. So this is where the slash is. You see index, it says accounts, it says checking accounts. That makes sense. That is what I've done. That's what I've Googled for. This all makes sense. Here's the padlock that you can see. So this just goes in conjunction with the HTTPS. If you're on the computer, you can click on it. You can see that the connection's secure. You can even, get a little bit more information on what's going on. If you're on a mobile phone, you should also see that in the search bar at the top. There should be a padlock. I'm not sure exactly where it'll be, depending on your phone and what type of browser you're using, but you should be able to do the same thing. You should be able to just tap on that with your finger, and you can get all of this information. So this is just another layer of security to help protect you. So with all of that said, we are now in the question and period. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to stop sharing my screen here, and I am going to open it up for any questions. So I'm just going to go and see here. Doesn't look like there's anything in the chat, but I've unmuted you. There you go. So here comes a question. Yes, so that's a great question. So when you're doing anything or selling anything online, so whether it's Kijiji, it's Facebook, any of those platforms, the one thing that I would do is, especially when you're selling, is it is your goods. It's your goods that you're selling. So if you receive a message, a lot of the messages will come in, and it'll be just a copy and paste of your header, and then it'll say, is this still available? Those are kind of hard, so you can say yes, it is. And then what you'll notice is usually what'll end up happening is Someone will offer or ask if you offer shipping, and they'll say that they're, from New York, or they're from, overseas or something like that. And so through that process, what you can do is that's just another thing. Anybody that is asking for you to ship, anybody that is asking to overpay you for that is going to be a scam. If you're looking to buy things from somebody, when you're going in and browsing the sites, does the asking price make sense for that good? Does like if you're buying a TV and they're saying that it's $2,000, does that make sense? If not, then I wouldn't interact with that one. So it's just kind of one of those things. A lot of things that when you're buying or selling anything on these sites, it does require you to have a little bit of due diligence. If something sounds too good to be true, 99.9% of the times it is. So I would avoid that. If a seller or a buyer is getting really pushy on you as well to complete the transaction, that's also another indication that it's a scam or some kind of event like that. And then if anybody is asking for you to send your email so that they can do an email money transfer, or they're asking for your credit card information so that they can make a payment on your behalf, don't do any of that kind of stuff. So some of it seems a little bit uh, I guess just kind of logical, but it also requires you to be due diligent with that kind of stuff. So I hope that answers your question. If you have anything else, just please pop it into the chat, and I can do that. Is there anybody else that has any questions for me on what we covered today? If you do, you can type it in the chat. I have allowed for you to unmute yourselves. So if you're brave enough and you want to, get on mic and ask the question, feel free to do that as well. Yes. So just to follow up on this, another question came in. So what about prize offers? So again, that's a great example. We kind of covered that with the social media scams. If you have not signed up to participate in any type of raffle where a prize is available to you, most likely it is a scam. And so basically what it is like I said in my presentation, or showed in my presentation, it'll say that you've won $1,000 Amazon gift card, or you've won $1,000 Target gift card, or something like that. If you haven't signed up for anything that was offering that type of prize, it's most likely a scam. The other thing that you'll notice too is that, like, for our area, if we are getting an offer for a Target prize, we don't have any Targets in our area. We don't even have Target in Canada. So that wouldn't make much sense to us, right? If you're, they say you won a 50-50 draw and you've never applied or bought a 50-50 ticket, that's just another example of what's going on. So anytime that someone is reaching out to you that you don't know and they are offering you a prize, it's most likely a scam. You've probably received emails in the past too, or seen emails in the past that come through and say, hey, you have this great inheritance available to you um, from your uncle or cousin or grandparent or something like that. And that's just, again, if you weren't expecting that, you probably know your family situation a lot better than these fraudsters. So that's just another example of something to be mindful of and to pay attention for. So anytime someone is reaching out to you, especially for a prize offer, I would ignore it, especially if you haven't done anything. Hope that provides some clarity as well. Anything else? I want to make sure that we have a few more minutes here. I want to make sure that I give everybody the opportunity to ask any questions. If there's something that you would like me to show you, I can also do that as well. Feel free to ask. This is your time. All right. So the dreaded thing of online thing is silence. So usually when there's silence, that means that there's no questions. So hopefully that also means that I've done a good job presenting this to you and giving you some tips and tricks on how to avoid online fraud, how to detect online fraud, and just kind of give you some guidance and some tools that are available. I would highly recommend, again, that if you're doing any type of online banking or online transaction shopping, look at what's available for you to set up, biometric logins if you're doing things on your mobile phones or your tablets. I would look at what features are available for, say, two-factor authentication. So, things like email or Amazon or things like that. That will also help you provide some security as well, so that you are in control of those transactions. If you're getting a request to authenticate yourself and you aren't doing anything in there, that's just a good example that your credentials have probably been stolen, or they've been farmed. And it's just another way for you to protect yourself. If you get those notifications or those alerts, from there, you can, reach out to, your financial institution. You can log into that account and you can change your password, things like that to help protect you from there. Those are things that I would recommend. Anything else from anybody before I wrap this up? Just to thank you. So awesome. Thank you very much for everybody that attended and showed interest in this. I hope it did help you. There will be a recording available. So I'll be working with Jeremy internally to see what we can do to make this available. If you have any questions about your online banking at Lakeview Credit Union, please feel free to reach out to the branch, and we'd be happy to talk to you about your security, the tools that we have in place, and go from there. So again, online fraud is definitely something that we can detect and something that we can do to protect you. So please feel free to reach out. And with that, I will let you guys all go, and I hope you have a wonderful afternoon, and hopefully we'll chat with you soon. Bye now.